What's up, guys? I can't do it. I can't take Ash's advice. Good morning, everybody. Saigan Cat here with a Quester's Rest. It's been a while, I know. I can't see. Wanted to talk about game design today. I have had a hankering lately to play a really good MMO. Now, everybody is going to have a different idea of what good is. Some people like Mario. Some people don't. Those people are wrong. What makes an MMO good, to me, is immersion. And that's something that we don't really see at all in MMOs. At least none of the ones that I've tried, and I've tried a fair few. WoW had a good thing going for it for a while, but it still suffers from what most MMOs, and honestly what a lot of games suffer from, that kind of breaks the immersion. There's too many numbers on the screen. Very often you're given far too much information in a quantified way that kind of reminds you, oh, this is a game. Even in games where this information isn't readily available to you, add-ons will become supplied to you, like WoW. There's information outside of the game that you can go look at. And people treat these games more like games than they are game worlds. And there's a couple of exceptions to the rule where this kind of information overload is perfectly fine. Perry recently started playing EVE Online, a game that I used to play 6 or 7 years ago, and I recently went back to it as well. I lost the Dominics last night. It was heartbreaking. EVE Online is the most immersive MMO that I've ever played. It helps that everything is on one server. If you want to play with somebody, it's not a matter of asking them, hey, well, what server are you on? Okay, well, I'm on this one. Should I create a character on your server, or should you create a character on mine? You don't have to do it with EVE Online. There are factions to be concerned about. I'm not very well liked by Caldari State, so if a new player was to start playing a Caldari character, I'd be like, I can't come see you. I will get shot at. But as they're a fresh character, they could totally come over to Galente Federation space and be just fine. The reason that it's okay for EVE to have so much information, and if you haven't seen EVE, the jokes that it's a spreadsheet simulator in space are fairly accurate. But this is a space-age MMO with a large focus on economy, math, so much math. You can't play EVE without theory crafting something. But it makes sense. If you're in a spaceship, if you're flying around in space, you have all of this information. The game has a built-in browser and automatic links to lots of websites that people have created. Now, the impressive part about this is how much of it is actually done in character. How much of it is done in the game world. If you're on a super fancy, high-tech spaceship, it makes sense that you can get shield readouts, heat readings, see, how everything is doing, be able to chat with people regardless of where they are. This is the future. It makes sense. What I really, really, really want is a good fantasy medieval MMO. One where you don't have a party queuing system. Instead, you go to the town tavern that you are staying in and look for a group there. If you have a friend whose name you know, then I think you should have to mail them. And that mail should take a little while. Now, if you want to schedule a meeting place outside of the game, I think that's great. But as far as the information in-game is concerned, we have too much. We don't need a GPS when we're playing a fantasy MMO. We need a map. We need a compass. We need landmarks. Maybe allow us to take notes on the map, as many DS RPGs, a lot of dungeon crawlers allow you to do that. I think even the Zelda games on the DS allow you to do that, take notes on the map. That's a great idea. That adds to the immersion. Having add-ons and quest arrows and flashing lights telling you where to go does not add to the immersion. At that point, it's no longer a sandbox. It's an adventure game that wants to be an RPG. It should be challenging, too. Like, Kingsfield and Dark Souls challenging with the same mentality that EVE Online has. You see, in EVE Online, if your ship gets destroyed, it's gone. You have to get a new one made. Now, if your character gets killed, this is the future. There's clones and stuff. So you pop into a new clone, but you might be broke. You might not be able to afford a new fancy ship. They have a basic class or a basic racial starter ship, depending on which of the 4 primary races you are. And if you show up in a station without any ship at all, they'll give you one of these terrible pieces of junk, but it's enough to get you back on your feet. And it means you don't have to start your character over, especially with all the skills that your character has obtained that are not reliant on a ship. There's always a way to recover in EVE, but loss still sucks. Really, really bad. I almost threw my computer out the window when my Dominics got destroyed. And the worst part is that it was my fault. As things often are in EVE. There's actually, there's a well-known rule in EVE that if you can't afford to lose it, you shouldn't be flying it. The second you leave the safety of a station, your ship is as good as destroyed. And I didn't follow this rule, so now I'm without a level 4 mission runner. And as much as that made me angry, I also know that it was my own fault. I'm not quitting the game, taking a small break from it. I'll probably be back to it this afternoon. I might even stream some, because I might get into PvP or low-sec ratting or something instead of just Care Bear level 4 mission running. Because I can't afford to do Care Bear level 4 mission running right now. I kind of need to just go into low-sec space and get some rats. Maybe gank a couple miners. I haven't actually done that before. I've done some PvP, but it was always militia stuff. Anyhow, back to fantasy RPGs. We get too much information. Picture, if you will, a first-person fantasy RPG. You load up the game, you start in a town, Breckenary. You start in Breckenary from Dragon Quest, but it's in first person. The graphics don't have to be realistic. The graphics can be like 32-bit PlayStation era, pixelated polygon graphics. Graphics do not make for immersion. Now, they can help. They absolutely can help. But if the gameplay does not support those graphics, no amount of pretty graphics are going to give you immersion. You start off with some basic gear, just for the sake of fairness. You can do character creation. You can do something Dark Souls-ish, where you have starter classes, but all they really do is determine your starting gear, starting stats, and starting proficiencies. From there, you can build the character in whatever direction that you want. Because anybody can learn to do anything. There's no reason why a seasoned barbarian adventurer who's been doing this for, 15 years, seen wars, taken down warlords, there's no reason why that guy can't, just hang up his axe one day and be like, I wonder if I could learn magic. You start in town, you have your starting equipment, you have a journal. A journal or a quest log fits into the game. That is something that an adventurer might have. It's something that they might keep. The hardcore might say that, well, turn that shit off, take notes yourself. And while that's fine, I don't see any reason why you can't have that feature in the game as well, because that will not draw away from the immersion. If your character can read and write and has access to a quill pen or a piece of charcoal and some wood, then they can take notes. But it's something that can be done in-game, and it's something that can be done without breaking the experience. You can talk to the NPCs in more of an Ultima-type fashion. They say certain things, and then they have keywords in dialogue that they might recognize. Somebody might say, oh, there are slimes that have been coming in during the night and destroying my garden, and I need you to go teach them a lesson, a la the Dragon Quest Heroes side quests. Go kill 5 slimes for me. Now, this is still acceptable because it's still within the game. Now, instead of having windows popping up along the side and saying, current quests, go kill slimes, action, quick bar, health, mana, chat, etc., 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 you don't have a GUI. It's just just the game. And this would work really well with, you know, the new VR technology that's coming out, because immersion, but, you know, we don't even need VR. There have been decades, literal decades of super immersive games that are more immersive then than the games are now, that didn't need this fancy tech. But it's nice to have if the gameplay can support it. Now, your character may have a journal and mark in so-and-so in Breckenary wants me to kill 5 slimes. You could go outside town, look around for slimes, you get into combat. It doesn't have to be a fancy combat system. Dark Souls does not have a complicated combat system. Kingsfield did not have a fancy combat system. It doesn't have to be flashy. It's a medieval fantasy game. You're starting out. Morrowind doesn't have a fancy combat system. It could be as simple as Morrowind's combat system. Maybe add a block button in. You start combat with the slime. You swing your sword, you hit it. No numbers pop out. Maybe there's a little splash of blue ooze to give you an indication that you've made contact. Maybe there's a sound effect that goes sploosh, because it's a slime. The slime counterattacks you. You get hit back. The character can make a grunt noise. The volume and sound effect played can be related to the kind of damage that you take. It's a slime hitting you. You go, ugh. And that's it. A red dragon breathes fire on you. The character screams in pain. We have ways to indicate how you are doing in combat without showing you the numbers, without showing you your health. This has been done before in lots of games. I know you'll say, like, well, Dark Souls has a health bar. You're right. Kingsfield has a health bar. Yes, Morrowind has a health bar. You are totally correct. One of my favorite game series, is EA's Fight Night series. Now, I'm not much into boxing. I'll watch it sometimes when my job requires it, and I don't mind. I actually kind of look forward to seeing the boxing matches, but I'm not going to go out of my way and do it in my spare time. I'll watch old matches occasionally, and there's a lot of talent there. The interesting thing about Fight Night, when that series started, was no health bars. You knew how your character was doing based on your familiarization with them, based on visual cues. If they were gasping for air, you knew that you've used up a lot of their stamina. If they're swinging their arms really slowly, you're working them too hard, they're punching too much. If they're gasping, they've taken too many hits in the gut. If they're kind of reeling and not really looking the right way, you know that they've taken a couple of hits to the chin and to the head. You didn't have a number indicator saying, oh shit, pay attention because you're about to get knocked out. You had your character's visual cues, and you paid attention to them. And it kept the game really immersive because you weren't distracted by all of this information. You had all the information that you already needed on the screen. Well, Sai, how do you do that for a first-person action MMORPG? Your sword is slower. You know, going fresh into combat, you're sharp, your swings are good, they're fast, your eyes are always on your target. As you get tired, when you swing, you get lazier about it, you don't have as much control over your weapons, so we get a little bit of visual motion blur. Your sight might begin to shift around and move away from the enemy. When you get hit, you'll notice it more. If a slime hits you at full health, you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. If you're really close to death and a slime hits you, go reeling back, lose sight of the enemy for a second before recovering. We don't need the numbers game. How do you communicate with other players? This is a tricky one. I've thought about it for a long time, and part of me thinks that it would be a turnoff to a lot of players. But the other part of me thinks I might be wrong. I think that there's still a market for this kind of game. This doesn't have to be viewed as hardcore. It doesn't have to be the same difficulty level as these other ultra-punishing games. In fact, this could be a very casual, easy-to-play game and still be immersive without that difficulty level. And again, we're sticking to immersion because we're focused on creating a game world here not a numbers experience. Voice chat only. I mean, that's a possibility. Text chat is gonna kind of take you out of the world at any point anyways, especially if you have to deal with it with, like, you know, well, trying to play with maybe a VR headset on and you want to use some motion controls. I think that it's important that we look to the next stage of gaming. We're all pretty sure that VR is it. Maybe not right now due to the cost of headsets. I'm getting off track again. I'm getting really off track several times today, so sorry. So scratch the text. No on-screen text that is not part of something that is written down within the game require a microphone. They're cheap. Anybody can get a microphone these days. If you have a computer that's running a game from the last 10 years, you can probably afford a microphone for it. You can go to a Goodwill and get a microphone for like 50 cents to $1. It doesn't have to be good, just has to function. There's no local chat. There's no Baron's chat. There's no shout command. There's no whisper command. Instead, it's all just going to be volume-based. You speak regularly, and the closer somebody is to you, the higher their volume, or your volume, for them is. This makes the game much more personal. It makes it more immersive. It encourages better party play. Again, this drives you to meet at a tavern or something in the game to meet your party members and suggest heading out together. Because if somebody gets lost and you don't have the ability to omnisciently communicate, playing as a group becomes much more important. You're in a dungeon. You really don't want to get separated from your teammates. If somebody says, you know, they have to go AFK, you're going to want to wait. You may not want to press on without them, especially because these dungeons should be much more labyrinthian. Easily mappable, I think, is important to kind of get people into the genre and at the beginning levels of play. But even the first dungeon of the game is something that you should be able to get lost in. You may need a hand free for a torch. You may wish to make a map. Now, map-making skills are interesting. Is this something... I totally just knocked the table there and knocked the camera around. Map-making skills are kind of an interesting point to stop on. Do you have the character make the map in-game? Or is that too perfect? People make mistakes making maps all the time. It's happened to me in old RPGs where I've gotten horribly, horribly confused. The first Phantasy Star, for instance. You guys have seen my map. You saw the maps that I did, my big pad of graph paper, and I took maps of every single level. Baia Malay, I made a number of mistakes when initially mapping out Baia Malay, and if you make a mistake mapping, you get much more lost than you probably would have trying to go without a map. Because now, you're going off of something, and you don't realize that it's wrong for a while, and when you do, you're not sure where you messed up. You might as well start over. If the character maps for you in the game, there's no concern about making a mistake. So, I think you could go either way. This could be part of the difficulty level. Legend of Grimrock does that. Legend of Grimrock has an auto-mapper, but there's a special achievement for beating the game without having it. I think it's called the graph paper achievement or something. It's a great idea. Me and some of the guys at work loved it because it reminded us of many of the games that Legend of Grimrock was trying to recreate, like Eye of the Beholder, a classic. There should be no experience levels. Skills should be learned based on time spent using them. If you want to get really, 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 really good with a longsword, you fight with a longsword. If you want to get really, really good with a shield, pick up a shield. Use it to block a lot. There can be combat roles in this game, but they're going to be much more loosely defined. You're not going to have a situation where somebody needs to respec. Instead, you may have a stealthier player, somebody who wears lighter armor and is really good at, crouch walking. Your speed in the game should be a combination of your height, your strength, how much moving your character does anyways, but also things like actually just walking instead of auto-running everywhere. A character who wears light clothing and spends a lot of time moving slowly should gradually get much faster at moving slowly while retaining their same silence. You can have sneaky characters in a game like this, which will be important because there won't be a radar. This will be first person. There could be PvP in this game. Thieves in MMOs right now are horribly, horribly misrepresented. Because you always know where the other players are. The best thing that they have for thieves right now is the stealth ability, which is essentially a personal cloaking device until they perform some kind of aggressive action. In this, there would be no such thing. A thief character would actually have to play closer to Solid Snake or Sam Fisher. Back to the example. You're in a group. There's 3 of you. We're going old school D&D. You have somebody who is kind of fighter-ish, you have somebody who's sneaky, and you have a magic user. The thief is scouting ahead down a dark corridor. The others remain back with a torch. They can prepare for combat. The magic user can prepare scrolls or prepare spells in his book. This is something else that has been done wrong in games for a long time. Magic in a fantasy MMO, I feel, should be much, much stronger. The characters absolutely should be weaker because they're not going to be getting hit as physically. They're not building up a resistance to it. They're not toughening up their physical forms to have more stamina and be able to resist damage better. They spent their time poring over spell books and trying to improve them, and the more time they do doing that, they're going to have stronger spells and kind of a weaker physique. Now, this is something that they can try and make up for later, but that time spent training up their physique is going to be less time spent working on spells. It balances itself out in its own way without having to worry about levels. So the fighter stays back, polishes his sword, checks his gear. All of this can be visual. Just, a button opens up your bag. You can look around. Small inventories. We can have encumbrance. There's no reason to not have encumbrance. We don't have to have people carrying around entire cities worth of inventory. It makes the gear that you have that much more important. You aren't carrying around stuff just because, oh, I might need this. You only carry what you are absolutely certain that you might need. Certain and might in the same sentence. Shut up. The game is a little bit exciting here. There's no combat occurring. Fighter and magic user are sitting alone in a dark dungeon. They have a torch that's slowly dwindling. Maybe they have another one in their bag. Maybe they don't. We don't know. The magic user is like, I'm going to prepare a light spell just in case. Let me write out a scroll or 2 for casting some light so we can get out of here if we never see our thief friend again. And you don't know what's going on with the thief. He's gone. He's down that corridor. He took a turn somewhere. You don't see him anymore. It could be a race with dark vision. We can bring dark vision back. We can have lighting in games. We have the technology. It's been there for a while. And it's one of the things that adds to the atmosphere of a dungeon. Maybe you can save your character in town or something, like record them. You could have like some kind of magic society or religious society who returns your character to life if they die. Summons your spirit back into a body. Rubus has returned you to life. All of your gear is still in that dungeon and you may need to go retrieve it. So you keep extra gear in town, in a bank or something. You keep stashes in all the places that you might be adventuring to. And when you're setting out for a new land, one of the things you do when you arrive is you set up a stash of gear there as a just in case you do die and need to go retrieve your other stuff. Or in case you do die, go, oh God, there's like 5 dragons camping my corpse. I can never, ever go back in there. I'm just going to cut my losses and hold on to this stuff. Having the fancy gear will make the game riskier on its own. People will learn to appreciate the common gear. You might find a magic sword that's absolutely amazing and say, well, I can't take you out anywhere. You're going to sit in the garage, and I might shine you sometimes and show you off to friends. Because every time you pull that magic sword out, you're facing a risk that something awful could happen, and you could lose it. I'm off track again. You have no conversation, you have no communication with the thief. He's gone. This is exciting for the fighter and the magic user at the same time. They can stand there, they can have conversation, they can talk about what they might do if their friend doesn't come back, they can talk about the preparations that they can make if their friend comes back, they can talk about how work went, they can talk about the kids. It doesn't matter what they're talking about. What matters is that a line of communication has been cut. Their friend has no way to reach out to them and tell them that he is in trouble. Or maybe died. Maybe he missed a pitfall trap. Maybe he fell down to another level and is now surrounded by goblins and is in plain sight. And he's a thief and has a knife. This is exciting for him too. All the damage is somewhere else. Is a thief good in a fight? He's good for one guy, if he doesn't know where he is. He sneaks along, comes across a closed door. There's cracks in it. Manipulate the camera a little bit so you can see through the cracks. Oh god, there's an ogre in that room. I'm going to back away from here very slowly, turn around, and I wasn't keeping track of where I am. I'm now lost. And without my party. We haven't even gotten into combat yet, and it sounds like a better experience than most of the MMOs that I've ever played. Wandering monsters. The thief goes creeping down the hallway, turns a corner, and he hears a door open somewhere. And he hears footprints. Is it the ogre? Was it something else? Are his friends coming? Does he look around the corner to see if it's the ogre? Does he bolt and risk getting lost even further? Or alerting monsters with the sound of running footsteps? Do his friends start looking for him? It's been a while. Did he take a left or a right at this fork? Should we split up and look for him and then meet up back here at the fork in the next 5 minutes? In D&D, this would drive the DM nuts because you now split the party in 3 different directions, and it's infuriating. But in an MMO, it's brilliant. Monster difficulty can be based on preparedness, like in Monster Hunter. Is it possible to take on a monster naked in Monster Hunter? Yes, if you have the skills, absolutely. Is a monster going to be challenging even if you have amazing gear? We've seen time and time again that inexperienced hunters who cheat to get the best gear in the game will still get rolled over by not even a G-rank monster. Some of them will cheat and get amazing gear and barely make it Knowledge of what you might be fighting is an important part of classic RPGs. Supernatural monsters, ghosts, lycanthropes, things like that, you need to have either a silver or a magic weapon. In a lot of classic D&D games, even just having, like, you didn't even have to have an enchanted. Like, if you could get your hands on a silver dagger, like, that was a massive weight off of your chest. You might never use it, but having it there says, okay, well, if I run into a werewolf, at least I have a chance. Without that silver dagger, your only chance is to run away. But this gives you a fighting chance to actually tackle something that would normally be a massive problem. And the same goes for this game. We can have enchantments that help resist various elements. We can have characters who specialize. Perhaps you've killed a dragon. Now, behind the scenes, up front, you see nothing. You see a dead dragon. You can maybe loot from its stash, maybe carve it up, Monster Hunter style. Behind the scenes, numbers that the players will never see. And it's important that the players never see these. It's important that add-ons are disallowed. It's important for the overall experience that this is a game for people who want immersion. This is not a game for people who want to crunch numbers. This is a game for people who want the experience. Not the achievement points. Not the EPing. This isn't a game about having the largest throbbing EPing. This is a game for people who are looking for adventures and are looking to share stories of adventures with like-minded individuals. Behind the scenes, there's still going to be numbers going on. You have to. It's a game. It's a simulated environment. There's numbers involved. Every time you kill a monster, have a very, very small increase in the damage dealt to the monster and a decrease in the damage received from the monster. So that as you fight slimes, not only are you getting better with your sword, that's going up a little bit, but every slime you kill, you have a little bit more experience fighting slimes. You know a little bit better where to hit them. Now, you can have weak spots on larger enemies, like dragons. You can have a weak spot on them. You can have a weak spot on golems, etc. Certain enemies can be weak to certain kinds of damage. Skeletons take increased damage from a bashing weapon. A skeleton will be more damaged by a mace than by a piercing weapon. Piercing weapons do like 10% of what they should. If you try and stab a skeleton to death, you're going to have a bad time. Slashing weapons maybe do about half. A slash that doesn't cut is still a little bit of a bash. It doesn't have a long sword. Okay, well, I'm slashing with the tip of the sword. It is affecting the skeleton much more than trying to stab it or shooting it with an arrow, but it's not as good as just hitting it on the side with a plank of wood. Damage types are important. Preparation is important, and all of these things can be slowly improved by the character's experience without ever giving us a level or ever showing the character a number to relate to it. If players say at a higher level, say, okay, well, I found where a red dragon is. It's got a magnificent hoard. There's probably magic items in there, because magic items will be great. Most players, even players who've been playing for a long time, I wouldn't expect them to be blinged out with gear. Maybe if they're farming something, maybe if they need blue slime oil, you might see a blinged out paladin wandering around with a magic sword just one-shotting the crap out of everything because he needs some blue slime oil or whatever. But is he going to take that into a fight that he doesn't know anything about? His team wants to hook up on Friday night and go fight a red dragon. What is the best way that he prepares for that? He finds cheap gear that he's proficient in the use of. He's been wearing heavy armor for a long time, so he wants to get heavy gear. He knows that iron is probably going to be too weak for this, but he doesn't want to spring for mithril right now. I guess mithril would probably be light, and more of a chainmail type thing. Orichalcum. He doesn't want to go full-blown orichalcum plate on this monster. He has orichalcum plate, but it was really, really expensive. And if they die and he drops that orichalcum plate and he resurrects in his body somewhere else, how do you get that back? You can bring new gear, but now you're even worse off than you were before. So you want to prepare well for it. Iron's too weak, orichalcum's too expensive. I'm going to get myself some quality steel gear that's not going to break the bank. I'm going to post an ad on the town message board. You can post an ad somewhere at a variety of prices. You can have the price increase for posting an ad depending on how much space is left. You post an ad, say, I need a fire resistance enchantment done on armor. I'll be in this area all day, and I'll check in here at these times. Maybe somebody shows up, maybe somebody doesn't. Maybe somebody has already prepared for this kind of thing. Maybe there's a mage who has posted an ad for his enchantment shop. Doesn't have to be an actual shop. We don't even have to get into player-owned spaces yet. We're still just working on the core idea of what a good immersive fantasy MMO should be. There's already an ad up there. Created some enchantments. I'm online at these times. These are the hours of my shop. Maybe only has to be for an hour a day. You have enough people doing this, and it's fine. Maybe you can even mail something to these people, okay? Now, if this is a good game, people are going to be logging on once or twice every day, or trying to at least. You have a week to prepare for something. which is good. You would want to have time to prepare for these intensive fights that you don't have any experience in. He's able to schedule a time by posting on the board or mailing this mage to get the work done on his armor to grant fire resistance, because it's a red dragon, pretty sure it breathes fire. That's what the rumors say. So he gets this moderately priced gear that he can afford to lose, enchanted with moderate priced enchantments. He is now at a point where he feels competent enough to maybe not win the fight, but at least survive it. Perhaps they can scout out this dragon and survive. He's not bringing his best gear. He's not wearing his nice clothes. He's prepared in a very reasonable, I could lose everything fashion, so I'm not going to bring everything. That makes things more tense. And you're going to have people who get greedy sometimes. People who lose everything. That makes the game more exciting. Now, it's important that these kinds of things get handled in the same way that they are handled in EVE Online. I lost everything. I got screwed over by another player. I'm down billions and billions of ISK. I don't have any ships left. Fix it. No. I will unsubscribe. Okay. Goodbye. 10 years ago, I would not have thought that a game like this could be successful. This is something that I think about a lot because I've really wanted a good MMORPG like this for a long time, a really long time. I want that living fantasy world experience. And I get tastes of it sometimes in other games. I want the immersion. And 10 years ago, this kind of thing I don't think would have been possible. Because there's going to be real challenge there. The game doesn't have to be, like, super punishing by design. Instead, the players will create punishment for themselves by tackling things that they might not be prepared for, jumping into situations that they're not ready for, or even just making a mistake. But these mistakes should cost the players, because if the mistake doesn't cost the player, then where is the adventure? And now, we have games that truly punish players for mistakes. And much to everyone's surprise, they've found an audience. There have been a lot of times where America hasn't gotten certain games because our market has been looked at and someone has said, no, this is too hard. Mario Brothers 2 didn't see an American release for so long. I mean, the real Mario 2, not Doki Doki Panic. The original Mario 2, what we got later as Lost Levels, didn't see an American release because the guy who was checking out the game for release played until he got to the first poison mushroom, got killed, and decided that was kind of cheap and unfair. I don't think people would like this. And this has happened time and time again. Sony wasn't originally didn't publish Demon's Souls here because they thought, this game is way too frustrating. This game is way too hard. The American audience won't like this. Then Atlas published it. And Sony couldn't push Dark Souls out the door fast enough following the success of Demon's Souls. People want the immersion. People want the challenge. People want the water cooler stories where they can talk about both their successes and their failures. One of the biggest things that brings the Souls community together is talking about the ridiculous ways that they've been killed. Because even failure can be fun if the game is done right. If there's enough weight to it. You don't talk about dying during just a bad pull. In WoW, bad pulls happen all the time, and generally they all go the same way. Somebody makes a mistake, the party wipes, and you go, well, let's try that again. I'm not knocking on WoW. I do love World of Warcraft. It's just, it's an action game with a lot of numbers on it. It's a non-action action game. Really the only thing that the game is missing at this point is like gamepad support. And that's it. We don't have to have a lot of skills. We don't have to have amazing abilities for a game to be fun. You can have a button for blocking, you can have a button for swinging a weapon, and you can figure out different ways of doing that. Mount and Blade. Mount and Blade has a very, 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 very simple combat input system. Combat in Mount and Blade is deceptive. in how simple it looks. But there's a lot of planning that goes into it. There's a lot of trying to figure out your opponent. There's a lot of trying to figure out, okay, well, he likes attacking this way, so I'm probably going to be better off blocking this way. And you get kind of the higher level fighting game mentality where you're trying to condition your opponent to do something that you can abuse. And it does it on a very simple engine. You don't have to create an engine that does these things for you. You can just create a sandbox that these things develop into anyways, or develop out of, rather. Anyhow, I have to cut this video now because in real world time, I've been rambling for like 58 minutes, stopping to drink coffee and eat my loaf and jug tornadoes. Thanks for listening to the ramblings of this middle-aged man. I'm your host, Saigan. I'm sorry, Ashes. I can't call my viewers skanks. It doesn't work. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully I'll be streaming later today. I might stream some Eve. We'll see. I still need to work on the Dragon Quest 3 post-game, but I'm so tired of grinding. I want a Dragon Quest game where I don't have to grind so much. But then is it as rewarding? If I could just go up to the Divine Dragon and beat him at level 20 and never did any bit of grinding in the game, would it be rewarding? It wouldn't be. And that's kind of, I think that the Dragon Quest design mentality that Yuji Horii put into place, where you reap the rewards of hard work, and that reward is success, it kind of stays through the whole experience. It stays with my expectations of video games. I expect to have to do hard work in one way or another to make the game exciting and successful. If the game is easily beat, if the gear is easily won, it's not exciting. I would rather go and do something else.